Shaper Origin's new product, Bench Pilot, is finally released worldwide, and many of us are now getting our hands on them. And if you're unaware of what Bench Pilot does, it essentially transforms Shaper Origin into a self-guided, traditional-like CNC, while still giving you the ability to disconnect Origin and work remotely. It's a pretty awesome piece of kit, if you ask me. But there are a few things that we need to know before we dive into our first projects, as well as a couple of add-ons that we need to add to Bench Pilot to really make our bench piloting lives a whole heck of a lot easier. So that's what I'm going to be going through in this video. My name is Jared, and this is Vulgar Woodworks. Okay, pro tip or pro accessory number one here that you are going to want to strongly consider adding to your Bench Pilot is a Y at whatever extraction source you have. Because here's what's going to happen for the first couple of projects now that we have Bench Pilot. You are going to stand and hover over it because this is completely unfamiliar to us as Origin users. But as you get more and more comfortable with the machine, you're going to want to jump ahead to the next process. And that means if you're going to jump into sanding, you don't want to sand without some sort of dust extraction. So a Y is going to allow you to hook to Bench Pilot as well as to whatever the next tool is down the line. With that being said, anytime you add a Y to a dust extractor, you are going to lose suction at both sources, so keep that in mind. Bench Pilot and Shaper Origin, they're going to make a lot of chips. You might not catch all of them now that you have a Y on your extractor, and if you jump ahead to something like sanding, you may notice that there is a decreased efficiency in capturing all of the dust, but it will still capture the majority of the dust, so just keep that in mind. This is a really good addition to add to your shop now that you've got Bench Pilot. Very quickly staying on the theme of dust extraction. So I know I'm going to field some comments about these two accessories here. These are basic 3D print files. I will link them down in the description. But this 45-degree elbow, it's just a friction fit. It goes right into the existing dust port and it alters the entry angle of the dust hose, which is really nice because now you don't get caught or bound along the edges of not only shelf, but if you're working with Origin out of Bench Pilot, going around table corners, things of that nature. Really easy and simple print. This guy here aids in corralling all of the chips and dust that are created by Origin, in that the original guard has these openings here and chips and dust tend to fly out. So with this guy, what we can do is now just snap him into place like so, and it does a much better job of keeping all that dust and debris inside so that the extraction can do its job. One word of caution here, these are printed out of basic PLA, I believe 15-20% infill, nothing special. For whatever reason, PLA, very clingy when it comes to dust. So just keep that in mind. Maybe there are 3D printers out there that know more about this than I do, and maybe there's a better material. But yeah, PLA, when you are really generating dust and chips, this tends to get clingy. So just keep it in mind, but really good add-ons. Now that you've got Bench Pilot assembled, synced to your Wi-Fi, it's ready to go. The first project out of the gates, extra shelves, extra spoil boards. I recommend getting yourselves a quarter sheet of 3/4 inch MDF. That will yield you 2 extra shelves as well as the material that we need for the second project that I'm going to be talking about later on in the video. When breaking down your sheet goods, you're going to want to cut them oversized. So I recommend a 17-inch long panel by 12 inches in depth. That will then, once placed onto Bench Pilot, give Shaper Origin plenty of support when it's making the cut. Now, even though we are just cutting basic old MDF, which is pretty easy to cut, this is still a good opportunity if you were learning the machine to play around with the spindle speeds in conjunction with now the feed rate dial. So if you haven't already done this, on the side of Bench Pilot is a dial which allows you to change the rate at which Bench Pilot then navigates Shaper Origin. And by tweaking that setting, you can affect and alter the cut quality. So with MDF and shop projects in general, I would say it's kind of fun to play around with that to see what the cut quality looks like. And if you haven't already done this, you need to take scrap material that you have in your shop and record the settings. This whole concept of Origin now being self-guided and us having the ability to manipulate the settings is completely foreign. We need to know these are the settings for walnut. These are the settings for 3/4 inch Baltic birch plywood. These are the settings for pine. We need to know those. So above and beyond just this project here, find some scrap material, design some very basic shapes on the tool, and then just cut them out with different feed rates, different spindle speeds. Heck, even the different bits will matter. So this is a good opportunity before you dive right into your very first project to start to actually learn the machine. When making your cut, I highly recommend making full depth passes. So the way that the original file off of Shaper Hub is designed is to leave a little ledge for the bolt head to grab onto to secure the new spoil board in place. What I recommend is plunging all the way through. And there's a 43-cent fix that we can use to now turn our single-use spoil board into a double-sided unit. While Bench Pilot is doing its thing, you are going to want to have these 43-cent spacers on hand. Now, I ended up picking up nylon spacers. They are a 1/4 inch hole by a 1/2 inch diameter by a 1/4 inch in thickness. I would have preferred to find metal spacers, but alas, my local hardware store didn't have them. By having these nylon or metal spacers on hand and installed into our spoil boards, what we are essentially doing is recreating the shoulder that the bolt head would normally connect to and allowing us to now have a 2-sided spoil board. So in the event that you accidentally plow through some material or your bit slips, like in my case, it's not the end of the world. You can now just take your spoil board off, flip it over, reinstall the spacers and your bolts, and bam, you're up and running with a fresh surface. One more pro tip here, and it deals with the wrench that comes with our workstation. I'm going to make the assumption that you also have workstation along with Bench Pilot. This wrench, when it comes to us, is not magnetized. And by magnetizing it, it will make removing all of the bolts that hold our spoil board down so much easier. And if you don't know how to magnetize something, it couldn't be any simpler. Just take a rare earth magnet and rub it along the shank of the wrench in the same direction. Don't go back and forth, just go in one direction, and that will then magnetize the wrench. Like I said, easy little tip here and will make your bench piloting life so much easier. One last tip so that we're not wasting any material after you get done cutting out your new shelves and spoil boards. If you've got any extra material around, take it back to the table saw and rip it down to size. This is 3/4 inch by 1 inch. These will then get used for vertical working. So if you're cutting finger joints or dovetails or tenons or whatnot, you now have a backer to support those cuts. Just don't waste the material. You got it, use it. So the final project, the one that you've all been waiting for, deals with the negative space that is on the back side of workstation within the frame of Bench Pilot. This right here is ripe for storage. And if you're anything like me, you want to have all of the accessories, bits, tools that we're going to use with Origin on hand instead of having to fumble around in sustainers or bags or wherever else we keep our stuff. When breaking down the materials for our final project, you are going to need 2 panels that measure 18 7/16 wide by about 10 inches in depth. That is the inside measurements that I took after assembling my Bench Pilot. You might want to kind of test and tune here and nibble away at the material in order to get that nice snug fit. You're going to need 2 of those panels and then save whatever excess or offcuts we have because we want to elevate this piece as high as we can possibly get so that it then becomes easy to gain access to all of the storage we're about to create. Now, unfortunately, because of the dimensions of the panel we're about to cut, we can't just put it into Bench Pilot and bam, hit go. It won't work because it's too big. So we're going to have to do this the old school fashion of finding a spoil board, putting it down, busting out the domino tape, and doing it that way. Not a big deal, and hell, this might be the last time you actually have to do that. Working time on the file was about 30 minutes. I used nothing other than the stock 1/8" cutter, and I have uploaded this file to the hub. So if you are a Studio user, you can download from the hub, put it into Studio, and manipulate the file to your heart's content. During the cut, what I found was I had tailored the design to be a very, very tight and exact fit. And that was just kind of problematic in trying to reach for tools and getting things in and out of the receptacles. So I played around with offsets and I kind of settled on a -250 offset. And that gave me enough hold, but then I didn't have to wrestle the tool out of the receptacle. So if you are going to go for this storage approach, a tight friction fit is probably not your best option. Give yourself a little wiggle room. Hopefully you found some value in the tips and tricks that I'm offering up here. Again, the file for this storage system, that's going to be on the Shaper Hub and linked in the description below. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.